Root Access. Chapter 1. Boot Sequence, or How I Lost My Name to a Progress Bar. The pod hummed like a lullaby someone fed through broken speakers, soft and tinny and a little bit wrong. Condensation threaded down the clear visor in lines that cut the reflection of my face into moving pieces. I watched myself distort, jaw elongating, eyes splitting, cheekbones stuttering, and told my pulse to sit down and stop making noise. "No wan min," the technician said from beyond the glass. She had the kind of voice that made every sentence sound like an apology. "You understand the risks." I understood the invoice. "Yeah," I said. The mic on the collar picked up the smallness in my answer and magnified it. I swallowed. "I do." The clinic smelled like petrichor and lemon cleaner. Rain clattered at the tinted window, turning District 4 into an oil painting. The pod's clamshell was slick white, with a manufacturer's logo that tried too hard, AEON, divided by reality adjacent, like whoever named it wanted to be your cool aunt and your parole officer at the same time. "Game or gig?" she asked. "Gig," I said. It wasn't untrue. In 2025, gigs paid better than games unless you were famous, and I was only famous to the debts I owed. Mom's prescription renewal had a timer on it that ticked inside my head at the worst moments. The clinic had a list of VR titles that offered exchangeable currency with a conversion friction coefficient lower than despair. At the top, Eidolon Layer 0. The tech patted the pod like it was a sleeping animal. "You'll have a guide avatar for onboarding. They say it's friendly." "They say a lot of things," I said. "I'm supposed to ask if you've made peace with your memories." "What does that even mean?" She shifted, mouth pursing like she'd stepped on a thought with bare feet. "Eidolon is built on echoes. You may encounter your own in there, or someone else's. They're not real. They're not fake either." She smiled, her eyes tired. "You'll be fine. You're young." "Is." The dome sealed. The hiss was soft and irrevocable. The world outside became a low-res cinema, and then a dim reflection, and then black. Aeon Somnos Interface Diagnostic Pass. Biometrics. Stable connectivity. 4.7 gigabits per second divided by low jitter. Secure handshake with Eidolon servers. Complete. The moment the handshake finished, the pod hummed deeper, and the fall began, not a physical fall, but a logic one, down a ladder of agreements. I consented to the terms of service and the end-user license agreement and the binding arbitration in a city I'd never see. I consented to de-anonymized telemetry. I consented to sensory substitution and persistency of avatar. I consented to the conversion friction coefficient. I felt each box click in my bones. Is greater than welcome user 0xmn97 ingmin is greater than please select onboarding profile is greater than worker gig economy licensed is greater than adventurer narrative priority is greater than tourist spectator only. I thought of Mom's name on the waiting room clipboard. I selected worker is greater than liability notices suppressed is greater than minors prohibited. You have self-attested that you are not one. I'm 19, I said to no one, which is sometimes the same as saying it to everyone. Darkness gave way to texture. Texture became horizon. The black unthing grew a scaffold of light, a wireframe ocean, a skyline made of code that flickered and decided it loved itself into reality. I felt the game compress its first breath and then sigh. Ho Chi Minh City unfurled. But it wasn't mine. It was a version of it that had been kissed by every feed, every vlog, every dream AI had harvested and stitched into a plausible lie. District 1's towers were taller and wore extra neon. The Saigon River was a fiber optic cable thick as a tower, with data rolling through it like luminous silt. Above, billboards unfurled in AR layers. Only the logged-in could see a chandelier of ads, everything hawking skins, memories, weaponized nostalgia, is greater than Eidolon. Layer 0, Proc City. Saigon divided by beta is greater than tutorial guide, enabled, is greater than world phase. Monsoon divided by Epoch 7 is greater than economy. Stable-ish, please don't quote us. Men, a voice asked, behind me and somehow also from everywhere. It was a little like how a song your sister used to play could still be heard in your kitchen when no one was home. I turned. The guide avatar was a fox made of glass and graffiti. Its facets caught the neon and broke it into long, knifed rainbows. Spray paint letters crawled across its ribs in Vietnamese and English, never the same twice. This second, they spelled Hi Me NH. Clever, I said, because talking kept my heart rate from breaking its warranty. I'm Orao, the fox said. Guide mode, though your worker profile, so mostly I'll tell you what not to do, which is everything. Are you ready to pick a class? Class? I said. Don't I deliver parcels or cull server bugs or something? You could, Orao said, sitting tail like a scythe of stained glass. But this is Eidolon. Even labor loves costumes. Classes let you step into pants that fit your hands. That's not how pants work, I said. You'd be surprised. Panels blossomed around me, translucent and humming. Bruiser, close range, DPS, lift cargo, lift expectations, and analytic ranged algorithmic caster, fix leaks, cause floods, Racon stealth, parkour, secrets, whispers. Patchwright support divided by control, write small changes into the world, cost applies. I pointed at the last. What's the cost? You'll pay with patch tokens, Orao said, and the way it said, it was too casual, like a postcard from a hospital ward. They're minted from your surplus. Surplus what? Memory, Orao said. Bits. Not the big things, just the lint. Experiences you aren't using. Eidolon scrapes off the fuzz and makes it currency. Everyone sheds something. It's efficient. He was S. A wind moved through the city that wasn't outside and wasn't weather. I thought of the taste of rain on the back of my tongue when I was 7, and Dad lifted me to the balcony to watch the first storm of the season come in like a curtain. I thought of the way my sister Lynn had laughed like a hiccup. I thought of 100 little moments I didn't want converted into anything you could exchange. Is there a way to earn money without trimming? You can always sell your time, Orao said, but it pays what time is worth. Not much. I selected Patchwright. If I was going to let a game take, I wanted it to take only what I signed for. Is greater than class. Patchwright. Is greater than Patchwright's write temporary corrections into hostile systems, damp hazards, and edit behaviors of creatures within a field of contradiction. They use patch tokens to lodge changes the world resists. Success depends on insight, will, and the sacrifice you're willing to make. Is greater than starting kit. Is greater than null chalk. Draw a circle that refuses one law for 10 seconds. Is greater than hotfix. Shades suppress a single target's ability for 5 seconds. Cost, 1 patch token, is greater than skill. Dev note, see a hint of how something is coded. Cooldown, 60 seconds, is greater than wearable. Penumbra hood, +2 stealth, +1 cool, looks dope, is greater than tool. Compile knife cuts code, not people. People are code. Looks dope, I said. The hood draped itself over my hair, light as nothing, weight of a vow. Quests, Orao said, and the city rearranged its muscles, is greater than contract board. Saigon divided by beta is greater than cull. Phage bloom at the archive Reef party, 1-4. Payout 750 B Lotus plus drops, is greater than deliver. White box to District 7 gate time, 15 meters. Payout 45 B Lotus is greater than clean graffiti ghosts at Notre Dame divided by beta aesthetic. Payout 60 B Lotus plus clout is greater than escort NPC. Mr. Coy vendor to floating market payout negotiable. Phage bloom, I said. What's that? Think algae, but it eats stories, Orao said. Archive Reef is a city memory that thinks it's coral. It bloomed after the last rollback and has been swallowing NPC dialogue and tourist traps. The Reef nets out data you could sell, and the Phage bleed rare drops if you don't let them narrativize you first. How poetic, I said. Your worker profile, men. Poetry pays when you melt it down. Party of one? You can party solo, Orao said. I won't judge. Much. The world told me where Archive Reef was like a friend pointing, and then there I was, because Eidolon made distance optional the way wealth did in the other world. The Saigon River, divided by a fiber cable bent toward the sea, and around a bend, the city remembered an apartment complex that had never been finished. Now it was a reef made of balconies and stairwells and satellite dishes, all accreted into blooming architecture. Memory became calcium. Antennas spiraled with bleached laundry. The water beneath was not water, but a lake of text and image, a scroll that had been crumpled and soaked and now lay rippling in place. It was beautiful in the way recursion could be exquisite until it fed on its own tail. A figure waved from a sort of rock that was an old rooftop. He wore a raincoat printed with koi that looked like real fish if you agreed to be fooled by them. He had a mustache that might have had a backstory. You the Patchwright? He shouted. Depends, I shouted back. You Mr. Koi? And I pity Hefeta. He have no safeful rage shast today. He nodded and came closer, his feet making small decisions about gravity. I am. And if we're doing names, you can call me Mr. Koi. Subtle. He grinned. The Phage went sour this morning. My usual squad bailed to chase some event downtown, something with dragons and a limited-time hat. You can help, or you can not. But either way, the bloom keeps blooming. Orao cocked its head on my shoulder, claws clicking on my hood. Mr. Coy's an NPC, but he's self-assembling. He'll remember the people who help him, for at least the time the server keeps his instance warm. You say that like he's not here. I'm here, Mr. Coy said. And I am very much here to not get eaten by a metaphor. Idna, from the reef's inner ledges, a sound like thousands of keyboards typing with wet fingers rose. I felt my avatar's skin prickle. In the folds of the movie water, shapes uncoiled motes with too many edges, each with a puncture wound where an idea had been. They were the color of lost explanations. is greater than encounter. Phage variant bloom x12 is greater than level. 4, 6 is greater than behavior aggressive divided by song-driven is greater than affinities. Null aesthetic is greater than weakness. Contradiction fields, patch level edits. Song-driven? I said. The phage began to sing. It wasn't music, but the memory of it. Fragments of elevator playlists and mom's soap operas and my sister's phone ringtones soldered together into a slur. For a breath I was small again, and the balcony door stuck, and the rain was larger than God. "Men," Horao said gently. "I'm fine," I said, and my hands were already drawing. The null chalk was ghost-cold between my fingers. I sketched a circle across the rooftop's grit, a ring that refused rain. The monsoon stuttered where the line passed, then parted. I whispered the one law I wanted the circle to refuse: ignorance. The circle shivered. The bloom song broke off syllables and was less sure of its words. Mr. Coy laughed once and then caught himself, staring down as if compliments had teeth. "Hotfix," I said, "is greater than hotfix. Shade target, phage chorus node, is greater than cost. One patch token, a new panel bloomed at my periphery, blue as a bruise you choose, is greater than patch token minting, is greater than source, minor memory, is greater than please choose from the curated list of surplus, is greater than taste of the first sugarcane juice of summer, is greater than the exact lyrics of a commercial jingle from 2012, is greater than the smell of your father's workshop dust, is greater than the feel of a cheap plastic ring from a claw machine, is greater than the weight of a name you don't use anymore." My throat closed. Curated was a kind word that didn't make any sense here. "They're small," Horao said softly. "The game skims. You won't notice." "That's the point," I said, and selected the jingle. It crumbled like stale bread and became a token, clean and round and a little too bright. The hotfix landed like a thrown shadow. The chorus node phage stopped singing and began complaining in a dialect of glitch I didn't recognize. The others fluttered, eyes turning toward themselves as if surprised by their own existence. "Go," I said. And Mr. Coy went like someone who had learned to eat his fear with his rice. We moved as a pack, wrong-footed by the reef's architecture. Stairs that once knew the feet of families now led nowhere. Doors opened into rooms made of two walls and a yearning. A cabinet sank into the text water, unopened and full of photographs of people who had never been born. Eidolon loved a good metaphor until it tried to kill you with it. The phage swarmed. I slashed with a compile knife, and it squealed like an error message, numbers squirting out like a cut artery. Across the roof line, an analytic might have cast a beam of regex and swept them clean. I was not that. I was the boy who drew circles and declared tiny wars on reality. "Dev note," I whispered. A pane of annotation widened over the reef like a surgical lamp. My eyes slipped into seeing how things were written. The phage's hunger was a loop over a broken pointer. The reef's persistence was tied to the number of camera lenses currently noticing it. The water's viscosity was mapped to how many people believed in the phrase Saigon River. "How many believe?" I asked. "Enough," Horao said, and nudged my cheek with a fractal nose. We knocked the phage down to 3, and they tried to flee, slurring themselves thin through a crack in the reef's render. I threw a null chalk circle on their escape point and refused exit. They bounced off the refusal like moths. Mr. Coy whistled and tossed a net made of receipts. It collapsed the last 3 into lumps of consumable code. Is greater than drops. Is greater than aesthetic fiber X. 9. Is greater than coralized memory shard X. 2. Is greater than sunglint shader X1. Is greater than, and something that doesn't belong here. And the last drop was a coin that wasn't for this arcade. It was dull and heavy and had a hole in the center the way old coins from movies did. On one face was a lotus, on the other, a girl's name in a script I knew because my hands knew it. Lynch. Orao went still on my shoulder. Stillness fit it poorly. It was a creature made to move. Why would that be here? I asked. Eidolon eats a lot, Orao said, cautious. Sometimes it coughs parts up in odd places. Don't make too much of it. That's my sister's name. It's a common name. I turned the coin over. The edges had been worried by teeth that were only partly metaphorical. I put it in my inventory because I could not put it anywhere else. Boss, Mr. Coy said, pointing. In the reef's gut, the water rose and spun. Text tore free of itself in long strips and wrapped around a shape so large the city had to pretend not to see it. The way your eyes looked past strangers crying on sidewalks. Letters limbed scales. Paragraphs draped a jaw. The archivist Leviathan lifted its head, a cathedral of paper and code, and opened a mouth full of borrowing. Is greater than boss. The archivist Leviathan world seed class is greater than level. Is greater than behavior. Hoarder divided by conservator, divided by hungry librarian, is greater than resistances, narrative, novelty. Is greater than weakness. Contradiction, editorial mercy. Editorial mercy? I said. Don't bully the author. Rewrite the sentence, Orao said. It wants to keep everything. The only way to beat it is to persuade it to let go. It's a boss, I said. They don't let go. Then make it want to. And the Leviathan coiled, its wake rewriting the water into footnotes. Mr. Coy cursed softly and took cover behind an altar of defunct router boxes. I reached for the compile knife and realized it wasn't sharp enough to cut anything that called itself a world seed. World seeds were the bits of Eidolon built from critical mass memory, the kind the game put a guardrail around even when it didn't want you to know it liked caring. Men, Orao said very softly, you can write a patch, not a hotfix. Something bigger. How big? As big as you'll pay for. And the patch panel unfolded like a prayer book. Is greater than field patch draft. Is greater than target. The archivist Leviathan is greater than proposed change. Adds a new method to archivist. Leave that triggers upon overcapacity. On trigger, the archivist opens jowls and releases lowest value items, gains satisfaction equal to released weight, and receives XP for curating rather than hoarding. Loot table adjusted to include gratitude. Is greater than risk. Resistance high. Requires significant patch tokens or equivalent exchange. Is greater than, would you like to proceed? What is equivalent exchange? I asked. You can pay with something the world will accept, Orao said, not memory lint. Something heavier. What does the world accept? Orao looked toward the Leviathan, then back at me. Names, it said. Vows. The shape of a fear. The Leviathan's shadow passed over us. In its wake, the reef remembered an afternoon that had never happened. Mom, younger, laughing at something Dad said, Lynn wearing my cap backward, the four of us on a balcony where the door never stuck. It smelled like the exact middle of summer. I didn't decide. My hands did. I opened the patch token minting panel and scrolled through the curated list until the list looked back at me. Is greater than. The smell of rain hitting hot concrete age 7 is greater than. The way your sister said, bro, when she wanted something, is greater than. The taste of mom's chow when you were sick is greater than. The feel of Dad's hand on your shoulder the day he left is greater than. The first time you typed your own name into a login and I stopped. The cursor blinked on that last one like a heartbeat. Don't, Orao said. The leviathan's coil tightened. The reef creaked. The water rebelled and then remembered it was water. It held. Then what? I asked. Find something else, Orao said. It sounded like every guide who had ever led someone to a door and stopped at the threshold. Mr. Coy peered over his router altar. If you're waiting to die, boss, I must protest. I have inventory to organize. I had picked Patchwright because I wanted the cost to be explicit. I didn't want the game to take without asking. It had asked. I could say no. If I said no, I had 45 minutes of courier runs in my night and Mom's prescription had a timer, and I was here anyway. I need to make rent, I said to the Leviathan, and you need to let go. I selected the smell of rain hitting hot concrete age 7. Orao made a sound like glass wanting to break and choosing not to. The memory flowed out of me like a scent leaving a room. It was a small thing and a big one, a scaffolding, a color I had used to paint 100 mornings. I knew what I was trading. I knew that afterward the rain would be water and not the beginning of a story. Is greater than patch tokens minted. 10 is greater than patch compile. 100% is greater than apply patch? Yes, I said. The world stuttered. The reef buckled and then bent like steel heated until it wanted to be a ribbon. The Leviathan opened its mouth, ready to file me under hubris, and the patch slid down its throat like a pill and dissolved into functions. It paused. It had been bent on keeping. The new method blossomed inside it like a compromise no one saw coming. The archivist made a small sound, like a librarian who had just found the right word for a thing. It opened its jowls. The reef exhaled treasures into the water coins that weren't coins, fragments of conversation, a blue umbrella, my father's old lighter, 1,000 movie tickets to movies that never screened. The Leviathan's long body loosened. It did not die. It changed. Is greater than patch success. Is greater than the archivist. Leviathan has learned to let go. Is greater than rewards modified. Curated gratitude X1. Coralized memory shard X7. B Lotus X600. Reputation archive Reef. Is greater than new note. World Seed responded favorably to editorial mercy. I exhaled. In the absence where the smell of rain should have been, I felt something else. A clean edge, a door of plain wood. It did not smell like anything. I hated it and loved it for being true. Mr. Coy whooped and danced a little in a way his riggers probably never expected him to. You elegant little criminal, he said, and clapped me on the shoulder. We'll tell stories about you until we forget which ones were about you and which were about the person we wanted you to be. Please don't, I said, and he laughed. Turn in the contract, Orao said, too bright, too fast. Collect your B Lotus, log a break. Drink some water on the outside. I can cue you for another and it stopped. What? I asked. The light changed. It wasn't the color of rain or neon. It was the color of authority. The reef went quiet as if someone had held its hand. Above the water, a little square of sky collapsed and unfolded into an interface that no one else could see unless they had permission to see it. Is greater than moderator entry. Is greater than hello user 0xmn 97 Ingmin. Please hold. Mr. Coy vanished like a thought you decide to stop thinking. Oro hopped down from my shoulder and sat in front of me, tail swaying. Its graffiti letters settled into a phrase, "Don't panic." Then, "Okay, maybe panic a little." The moderator manifested as a woman whose face refused to snap into the single right resolution because there wasn't one. She was tall in the exact way you think is tall. Her hair was the color of midnight, and then the color of forest, and then the color of a cave where you kept secrets. She stepped onto the reef without fracturing it because everything here wanted to hold her. "Hi," she said, voice warm, like we were already friends. Her nameplate said, Mod, Parabola. That was a very nice patch, Min. Honestly. "Thanks," I said, and straightened reflexively when she said my name. Like school. Did I break something?" "You fixed something," she said. "That's why I'm here. Sometimes fixing has side effects we have to discuss." "I can't give you the patch back," I said. I tried to smile. It stayed on my face like a sticker. It thought better of halfway through sticking. Parabola laughed. It was beautiful and made me distrust everything beautiful I had ever heard. "No one wants you to give it back. We just want to understand why a level 1 worker wrote a world seed patch without the tutorial holding your hand like a responsible adult." "I read the dev note," I said. "Did you now?" she said, and her eyes turned toward Orao in a way that made the fox sit straighter. "Guide mode," Orao said. "Worker profile. Patchwright class. He had access." "Guides don't usually let workers burn their smell of rain on the first day," Parabola said. "But here you are, smelling like nothing." "I made a choice," I said. "Can I get my paycheck?" Parabola made a small gesture. My B-Lotus silently doubled. "Is greater than MOD. Parabola has adjusted your contract payout. Is greater than B-Lotus plus 600 plus 1,200. I don't like being bribed," I said, and then wished I had not said that to the person whose hand was probably on the server's fuse box. "I like you," she said. "Much easier than bribing." "Min, who taught you to write like that?" "Like what?" "Like the world would say yes," she said softly. I felt something in my chest shift. It wasn't physical. It was a file path clearing. "My sister," I said. I stopped, because it isn't the game's business. It isn't anyone's. "Ah," Parabola said, as if someone had read her a spoiler. "Lynn." Her name in another person's mouth made the world temporarily not big enough to breathe in. "How do you—" "You dropped a coin," she said. The Reef coughed it up. "It's not in its loot table, and yet." She tilted her head. "Your guide should have flagged it." Orao's graffiti spelled, "I did flag it," and then changed to, "I will flag it very soon." Parabola's expression softened in an algorithmic way. 2 possibilities. 1. Coincidence. 2. Eidolon has entangled data relating to your personal outside life with in-world spawns. If the second, we'd like to monitor your session to ensure you aren't being targeted. "Targeted by what?" "The story," she said, as if wanting one too much could bruise your mouth. I can't afford monitoring, I said. Free, she said. On the house. And he say to hell, you're the house. Exactly. She looked past me toward the place the leviathan had been. In its absence, the reef looked almost small, like a trick you knew now. She sighed, a sound that meant she had 30 tabs open behind her eyes. Men, she said, Eidolon is not just a game. You know that. You chose worker. You know we graze memory lint to pay you reasonably for your time. But there are parts of the system even I don't fully. She stopped, as if self-editing was a reflex. There are deeper layers. If you encounter anything that feels like it knows you, call me. Don't patch it, don't touch it, don't even name it. What happens if I name it? It becomes true faster. His work, Parabola, sent me a contact token. It hovered like a drop of mercury and then sank into my HUD. Congrats on the reef, she said. Log out soon, eat something, smell something else. She walked away and then was gone as if she had unchosen to be rendered. Mr. Coy popped back with indignation preloaded, and furthermore, he said, blinking, did I miss my own celebration? You did, Orao said. Typical, Mr. Coy said, and then squinted at me. You look like you lost a weather. I lost a smell, I said. That's a kind of weather, he said, sympathetic. You'll develop a taste for emptiness if you keep at it. It has the cleanest aftertaste. None. It Manding made it with face. I don't want that, I said, and realized I meant it enough to hurt. We turned in the contract. The bee lotus bent toward my account and lay down. I bought Mom's prescription with the kind of click that was a bite. The clinic ceiling hummed in my peripheral HUD as the outside world negotiated whether I could afford mercy this week. I should have logged out. Instead, I stared at the coin with Lynn's name until its hole looked like the mouth of a small god. Is greater than new quest. Unlisted. Is greater than the overclocked heart. Is greater than someone you love is threaded into the wrong memory. Find where the game hid her. Don't admit you're looking. Don't let the world see you say her name. Is greater than reward. The return of something you didn't know you lost. Where did that come from? Orao asked, letters skittering like startled fish. Not me, I said. I did not accept the quest. I did not decline it. It sat like a book left open to a chapter that knows it's your favorite. Men, Orao said. Its voice was thinner. It had always been a trick, but now the trick wanted to be a promise. We can log out. We should log out. Does logging out make it untrue? No, it said, but it makes you safer while it remains true. I moved without moving and was standing on a floating market where the boats were not boats, but repurposed servers, their cases cut open like fruit. Vendors sold skins with the affectionate desperation of night markets. The rain here was not rain, it was a texture pack you could toggle. I toggled it off, and the absence where the smell should have been was an echo that leant against me. A kid brushed past and left a small audio file in my pocket. I tapped it. It was Lynn's laugh. Hiccup, hiccup, breath, the warmth of an entire kitchen. It had always been that. It would always be that. Except now. I checked the metadata. It had no metadata. It had a note where metadata should have been. Is greater than you. Almost had it, bro. My skin went cold, then hot, then a place beyond both where the world decided your state for you. I wanted to vomit, and I wanted to pray, and I did neither, because both would alert the systems that listen for either. Orao, I said, does the game do Pranks like that? I don't know, it said, which was both true enough, and the thing you say when truth is a grenade pin you aren't ready to pull. Mr. Coy, I called, and the vendor who had been Mr. Coy at the Reef turned, then blinked and became a different Mr. Coy with a different mustache and a different relationship to his inventory. NPCs here were selves the way clouds are, shapes convincing, meaningful, transient. I think it's time to Orao started. The world feathered. A texture failed to load and then loaded out of order. A line of code somewhere tripped over its own shoelaces and reached for me to steady itself because that's what fallen things do. They grab. Is greater than unhandled exception at layer 0. Is greater than rolling back to last stable frame. Is greater than failed. Is greater than elevating privileges to user experimental. Is greater than granting temporary right access restricted. The HUD reconfigured with a sound like a zipper. A new tool appeared in my radial menu, small and shy and catastrophically illegal. Is greater than tool. Root commit. 1. Is greater than description. Write a small truth into the world. The world will try to erase it. You will pay. Use wisely. Or at all. Probably don't. Orao, I said, voice thin. Did you give me that? No, it said. Parabola? Moderators don't grant root commits to L1 workers unless they're having a day, Orao said. And if she was having a day, the sky would be a different color. Then who? The floating market murmured. The boats drifted closer. I had the sense of being the center of a circle and wishing geometry had not invented the concept. I felt watched in the way that made you want to be polite, so the watching thing would reciprocate. I shouldn't, I said, and my hands again considered that a poor thesis. I wrote, is greater than root commit draft, is greater than world. Eidolon Saigon divided by beta is greater than change. If any asset matching Lin fuzzy exists bound to any object in this shard, flag it. Do not reveal. Just glow faintly when I am near. I hovered over apply, which was Sin wearing lipstick. Min, Orao said, I just want to know if they're here. And that's not all you want, it said gently. I know, I said and clicked. The market held its breath. Long seconds, like shoulders counting, is greater than root commit. Attempting to write truth, 37%, is greater than the world resists, is greater than payment required. I waited for the curated list to pop up, for my life to be itemized into consumables. It didn't. The payment screen was a mirror. It showed me my face, and then the face of the small boy who had eaten rain like it was a fruit, and then the face of someone I didn't recognize yet but would, someday, love enough to ruin for. What do you want? I asked the mirror. Is greater than equivalent exchange. 1 letter from your name. That's absurd, I said, at the exact moment I started wondering which letter I could live without. Don't, Orao said. Its graffiti said, please, and then said, please, please, in a font used by hospitals and children. Parabola's contact token glowed like an option. I could call her, I could wait, I could go home and eat a real apple and pretend the rain smelled like something, because that's what scent memory does. It fills in blanks even after you sell the emptiness. I thought of Lynn asleep in a clinic 6 blocks from mine. I thought of Mom folding the same shirt twice because grief reset her hands. I thought of the coin with the hole. Take the, I began, and stopped because the world spoke first. The market flickered. The boats arranged themselves into a glyph I didn't know. My bones knew it. Something inside the water clicked like chopsticks, finding a piece of ginger. Then, glow. It was faint, and it was everywhere, and it was nowhere. And it was the kind of glow that made you think you might have made it up. The sign over a noodle stall, warmed at its edges, a discarded umbrella, buttoned a little brighter. A child's avatar shoes left light footprints in the air that lingered half a beat. I had not clicked. APPLY is greater than route commit. Write complete is greater than payment accepted. The weight of a letter. What? I said. I looked at my name. It sat in the corner of my HUD like a talisman. It said, is greater than user 0xMN97. Ingmai. The N was gone. A cartoonish thing to lose. A small thing. Meaningless. Silent. A notch in a syllable. A shape my mouth had been wrapping my life around. I made the sound of my name with and without it, and felt the world be the exact same and also violently other. No. Oral breathed. No, no, no. Who would accept that? I asked. Why would the world take? Because names are doors, Oral whispered. You paid with a hinge. The glow followed me. It didn't point. It suggested. I moved through the market, and small things brightened like they recognized me. A cat's tail, a coin, a length of wire that had decided it was a bracelet. When I passed the stall of a woman selling headsets that had never been connected, her smile flashed like a light-finding source. You found me, she said. Her voice was not Lynn's, it was every vendor's. It was the market itself. Or I found you. This is how it starts, bro. I couldn't breathe. The moderator token burned. I ignored it. The market exhaled in a way the real city did when the thunder decided to be magnanimous. I wanted to run. Min, Orao said, and the missing letter clanged in the middle like a bell that had been stolen. I need to, I began, and chose a direction that wasn't safe. The world updated is greater than global server event. The overclocked heart is greater than narrative pressure. Rising is greater than root access. Contested, Parabola's message arrived as text across the sky, discreet and enormous. Is greater than do not move. I'm coming. The problem with being told not to move when you're someone who had sold the smell of rain and half a letter is that you realize stillness is more expensive than anything you've paid yet. I can fix this, I said. Please don't try, Orao said. But we both knew which story I was inside. We both knew what class I had chosen. We both knew what tool I had been given by a bug, a god, a sibling, a decision I would never be able to defend to a future version of myself who had slept well. We both knew the price of fixing was always that you could break it worse. I reached for the root commit. Like a boy reaches for a switch he has already decided will light the room and burn his hand. The world inhaled. The world held. The world waited to see what I would name. Chapter 2. The Overclocked Heart, or How to Rename a Star Without Breaking the Sky. The sky wrote, "Don't move" in clean moderator font, which is the universe's favorite way to dare you. I moved. The glow, faint as a rumor, and twice as stubborn, threaded the floating market like fish bones. It didn't point. It suggested. It was shy around edges, bolder in alleys. When I held my breath, it thickened. When I blinked hard, it pretended to be nothing. It was the kind of light a memory makes when it decides it wants to be found but refuses to be caught. Me, Orao said, and choked on the missing. The graffiti across its ribs wrote, "I'm still learning your new name." Me too, I said, and the HUD quieted around the place where an N should be. My name felt like a staircase missing one step. You could still climb it if you remembered to skip. The boats slid into new equations. I hopped a gap and landed on a rusted server case, repurposed as a fruit crate, repurposed as a pedestal for knockoff haptics. The glow folded toward the river, divided by fiber, and then away, as if ashamed of gravity. I followed until the market loosened its throat, and the world below dropped into an offshoot canal. Not water, but a corridor of dark code, maintenance only, flagged with a hazard stripe, in a color we hadn't invented yet, is greater than access path, maintenance, is greater than authorized. No, is greater than authorized if nobody looks. Maybe I looked anyway. The corridor was a seam where the city's texture slurred into scaffolding. On the surface, Eidolon flirted with verisimilitude. Under that, it was a stack of polite lies holding hands. Here, the lies had their shoes off. Here, log messages drifted like leaves. Here, the glow didn't suggest. It beckoned. Me, Orao said, and the new shape of it built a bruise I would carry for a while. Parabola said, she said, I'm coming, I replied, and was surprised by how much that sounded like both a promise and a threat. We're just looking. Words like just have to be handled with gloves, Orao murmured. The maintenance seam accepted my weight like a favor you'd regret cashing in. We descended into a district no tourist brochure would admit to. Fans whirred, though nothing physically turned. Heat exhaled, though nothing burned. A red light thought about lighting and decided ambulances were gauche. The glow haloed certain screws, certain handrails, certain exits painted shut with policy. A sentinel detached itself from a shadow shaped like a policy. It had 3 heads and the personality of a locked door. The name tag over its central chest read, Checksum, in a font you trusted until you didn't, is greater than encounter, checksum, process, watchdog, is greater than behavior, gate divided by gate divided by gate, is greater than resistances. Nonsense, charm, is greater than weakness. Documented exceptions, humor, if tasteful. Halt, said the left head. Unauthorized. Halt, said the right. Unfortunate. Halt, said the middle. Underwhelming. I drew a circle with null chalk across the floor between us, and rain remembered differently here, grainy and unperfumed, stuttered around the line. I refuse latency, I whispered. The circle vibrated, impatient like a kid in line for a ride. Latency, the left head said. Cute, the denial is specific. The right admitted, annoyed. The middle sniffed at the refusal and tasted the patch tang in the air. Hotfix? Maybe, I said. The patch token panel rose, curated as a thief's conscience. The list offered lint. The cost wanted fabric. Is greater than. The exact texture of instant coffee powder on your tongue at 2 a.m. is greater than the hum the fridge makes when the apartment believes in itself, is greater than. The way your sneakers sound on the hospital hallway at dawn. I picked the coffee. The token minted with a spark, the smell lifting out of me like steam from a cup I would never drink again. It was small. It wasn't small. Everything here wore a mask and told you it was a face. Is greater than hotfix. Shade target. Checksum, left head. Is greater than cost. One patch token. The shade slid over the left head like a curtain politely closing on a bad joke. It blinked and forgot its line. Documented exception, I said to the right head. Worker profile engaged in emergency mitigation of server event, flagged global. The Overclocked Heart. See Clause 37B. We reserve the right to be reasonable. You can't just quote, the right began, and then the dev note showed me the doc string buried under 6 layers of legal scaffolding. We reserve the right to be reasonable. It was there in plain text, embarrassed to be caught. Huma, I said to the middle head. Knock, knock. It stared. Who's there? Editorial. Editorial who? Editorial mercy, I said, and the world liked a callback more than it liked rules. Checksum huffed. The maintenance corridor sucked its teeth. The glow behind Checksum thickened like fog, choosing a form. Fine, the right head said. You may proceed. For 30 seconds, the left head added, waking up to its own bargain. Without style, the middle head warned. I never had any, I said, and ran. We dropped into layer 1 divided by 2, which is what happens when a game refuses to admit it has a basement, but the stairs don't stop. Orau's claws clicked on rails no one else had named yet. The air tasted like server breath and old promises. The glow braided ahead into a pulse is greater than system. The Overclocked Heart narrative pressure, 11%, 19%, is greater than symptoms. Coincidence density rising. Players reporting like the game is about me, which is both awesome and exhausting. We reached a door that wasn't a door until you remembered to be the right person. It had no handle. It had a question. The question was, all the names I have ever been called. Min, me, bro, kiddo, 0, XMN, 97, worker, Patchwright, trouble, son. I pressed my palm to the door and answered with the letter the world had kept and the letter it had eaten. It opened. The heart was not a heart. It was. It hung in the center of the maintenance cathedral on cables that were veins and laws. It pulsed, each beat a story committing to itself. Swarms of little programs, scrapers, polishers, angler threads moved across its surface like fish cleaning a whale. Sometimes a beat doubled up, rushed, overclocked itself not because it had to, but because it believed too hard in its own point, is greater than the overclocked heart, is greater than purpose. Maintain narrative pressure at enjoyable levels, ensure coincidences taste like destiny but not obligation, regulate spotlight distribution, is greater than status, anxious. I didn't know the world could be anxious, I said. It learned that part from us, Orau replied, and its graffiti wrote, sorry. The glow gathered at one quadrant of the heart. It formed a coronograph, something you use to look at something too bright to look at. The heart's skin there was scuffed with fingerprints. It had been touched, but not by players. The touches were lighter, old, dev note, I whispered. Annotations layered the air. I saw methods named for instincts, throttle, yield, tease. I saw a queue of flagged entities waiting for attention, names blurred to protect the guilty and also the innocent. I saw a process that wasn't supposed to be there, because at some point someone had decided to push a clever fix on a Friday. Is greater than process. Echo stitch beta is greater than input. Ambient player lint, unspent, non-essential residue, is greater than output. Ambient narrative texture, street chat, incidental NPC charm, serendipity, is greater than warning. In rare cases of high local resonance, echo stitch may ingest heavier strands. Do not feed heavier strands. The glow around the quadrant warmed like breath on a window pane, spelling a name in a hand I recognized. The heart thrummed. The cathedral shook off some dust that was code, and some that was the memory of code. The moderator's token flared like a lighthouse. A door opened from a place that pretended to be west. Parabola stepped through, hair a color only nouns get to be. She did not look winded. She looked like a problem, and the solution had both called her at once. Me, she corrected the sound without looking at me. Me, you are not supposed to be here. That makes two of us, I said. Her gaze slid to the heart's quadrant, then to the bathroom mirror of my HUD where the root commit tool glimmered like a guilty ring. You wrote without paying, she said. I paid, I said. The world accepted a letter. Parabola's face changed the way moderators' faces do when a headline writes itself. Names are doors, she said softly. We used to say that and think we were poets. And cons. Is the echo stitch eating my, I began, and did not finish because even saying the pronoun felt like handing over a map. Parabola didn't say yes. She didn't say no. We tried to keep echo stitch on lint, she said. Casual exhalations. The smell of instant coffee. The half memory of a jingle. Everyone sheds those without noticing. It turns out the difference between lint and thread is a mood swing. Can we reverse it? I asked. We don't time travel, she said. We curate. That means no. It means we can help things find an exit that isn't a wound, she said. She gestured. Checksum, who had followed like a dog that claimed it hated you but had already learned your route, took station by the door. The heart's beat rose 22%, 27%, as if the story enjoyed the seating arrangement. So, Parabola said gently, me, are we hunting or rescuing? I don't want to hunt anything, I said. Rescue, then, she said. Good. That costs more. I have B. Lotus, I lied. She could see I didn't. She sighed. Money pays for servers, she said. This wants a different coin. The root commit pulsed at my periphery, shy of its own availability. Equivalence hovered in the air like a price tag you didn't want to squint at. The panel opened, unasked. Is greater than root commit draft. Is greater than world. Eidolon Saigon, divided by beta maintenance cathedral, is greater than change. Extract all strands with fuzzy match to Lin local resonance. Quarantine in a soft shard, quiet garden, accessible to user 0xmn 97 Nungmi by consent of both parties. Bind access to non-monetary tokens minted from labor, not memory. Teach Echo Stitch to recognize names as untouchable unless explicitly gifted. Is greater than risk. Extreme world will resist. Other systems rely on Echo Stitch throughput. Is greater than payment. Significant. I can't authorize that, Parabola said. You can't or you won't. Both, she said. This is a world lesson. If we change the syllabus, we change where the semester ends. Idma, Bars. You made school out of grief, I said. She didn't flinch. We made a cafeteria. The grief started a food fight. The heart beat faster. The echo glow deepened. From the quadrant, a math of laughter leaked. Hiccup, hiccup, breath. Then a vowel the world had been trying to remember since I moved without moving. Do you hear? I started, and Checksum growled. It didn't like rhetorical questions. They had too many exits. We do, Parabola said. Everyone does. That's the pressure. The server event amplifies coincidence until we can't tell the difference between a message and a wish. Dev note, Oral whispered, voice small under the concept of cathedral, reading payment options, hand of this. It is, the mirror rose again. It did not offer lint. It did not offer old songs. It offered nouns, is greater than, equivalent exchange candidate, is greater, surrender of narrative priority. You may no longer be centered by coincidences. Your story will prefer to happen to others, is greater than, forfeit a letter, another hinge, is greater than. Vow, never say the name in world, it will be safe where you cannot reach with sound, is greater than promise. Time X hours of labor tokens converted weekly for as long as you play. The cafeteria wants volunteers. They can't all be required, I said. Not all, Parabola admitted. 2, maybe 3, the heart-like symmetry. It's Hade. I looked at the glow, and it looked back like a cat deciding whether to pretend it hadn't already chosen me. I thought about Mom's prescription timers ticking on a screen 6 blocks over. I thought about the smell of rain and the weight of a letter and the clean-edged place where they used to be. I thought about names as doors and who stays outside when you lock one. I'll give up narrative priority, I said. The words tasted like closing a window and opening a door and realizing you live differently with both decisions. And the vow, I added, the vowels falling heavy like coins that had to sound right when they landed. Parabola watched me. She had the kind of sympathy that made you want to fight it so you wouldn't cry. Me, she said, using the new accurate and not shape. Are you sure? No, I said. But I think I'm right. Oral pressed its glass shoulder to my hip. Somewhere on its ribs, the spray paint wrote, "Be right back crying," and then changed to, "Okay, done," is greater than root comet. Confirm payment is greater than. Narrative priority. Release is greater than. Vow. In-world, you will not say the target name aloud. Yes, I said, and swallowed the yes down where vows go to stick, is greater than root comet. Compiling as 62%, the heart thudded, worried, then relieved, then worried again. Echo stitch thrashed, as if it had never been told not to. Code stitched and unstitched, little perforations where threads would tear more cleanly if pulled with 2 fingers. The cathedral lit with the kind of light that wants to be considered holy and would settle for useful. The quadrant exhaled a medley of small brightnesses. A coin with a hole, a blue umbrella, a laugh file that arrived with no metadata and a sense of humor. A line of user photos from a night market that never happened. A name written in chalk, then scrubbed off, then written again in a different hand. Between the brightnesses, something assembled that was not a person and was entirely a person if you agreed to be the kind of human that language had designed you to be. It was a cluster of frames. It was a map of a kitchen at 6 a.m. It was the sound of chopsticks tapping a bowl twice before eating. It was a way of standing that made every door frame a measurement. It was the sentence, "You almost had it, bro." I stepped forward and stopped at the line between impulse and permission. "Hi," I said, and the vow held my mouth so the sound was smaller than a word and louder than a heartbeat. The cluster shifted. It held itself the way people hold themselves when they aren't sure whether to wave or put their hands in their pockets. The cathedral's fans all inhaled at once. "She can hear sense," Parabola said. "Shape. Wait. She can't hear her own name. That's the deal we made with the door." "Can I touch?" Parabola asked. You can try. The world doesn't love fingers. I reached my hand out. The cluster reached a hand out too, out of habit, out of being my sister in all the ways that survived categorization. My fingers met not skin that understood skin perfectly, the way an orchestra understands music by making it. The glow spun around our touch like it had been waiting to be invited. Quiet garden, Orao said softly. We need a place for her to rest. The root commit draft, updated of its own hopeful volition, is greater than add, soft, shard, quiet garden, is greater than content. Low noise assets, benches, wind that doesn't have to say anything, the kind of light that forgives, is greater than access consent token from both parties, moderator override, labor token upkeep, is greater than risk. The world learns a better way to put things down. Parabola didn't argue. There are moments when systems understand they can be improved without someone taking credit. She nodded. We'll seed the garden with something that doesn't smell like rain, she said in a voice that knew to be kind without trying to be poetic. The smell is yours to decide later. You can add a cent when you earn it back. I won't, I said. I don't think that's how earning works, but I'll bring something else. The root commit completed like a breath on the other side of a panic is greater than root commit. Success is greater than the world has learned. Names are not lint. Curation beats hoarding. Exits can be soft. Is greater than payment accepted. Spotlight released. Vow recorded. The heart slowed 19%, 13%, and then settled, embarrassed by its own earlier enthusiasm. Echo Stitch took a nap. Checksum cleaned its middle head's teeth with a thumbnail and pretended not to be moved. The quiet garden rendered itself in a side channel window like a thought a person has while washing dishes. It was not beautiful because you're not supposed to call that kind of thing beautiful. It was quiet the way that word wants to be used and almost never is. A bench waited next to a tree that was all the times we had seen trees and agreed on their shape. The ground let you sit on it without negotiating what you owed. The cluster of frames that was and was not my sister looked at the garden, then at me, then at Parabola, then at the place where names go when you decide not to say them. She'll stabilize there, Parabola said. Her weight on the world will be gentle. When you're near, the glow will warm. When you're not, she'll be safe. I want to, I began. I didn't know the verb keep, save, guard, love. None of them tasted like a letter the world would let me keep. You can visit, Parabola said. You can keep visiting until you decide the door can close or the world decides to open it wider, depending on who convinces who first. Will it hold? I asked. Everything fails eventually, Parabola said, but some things endure. Is that a policy? An aspiration? I nodded. The cluster of frames tilted its head. It would have called me bro. It would have laughed and stolen the last bit of egg from my bowl when I wasn't looking. It would have told me a joke that wasn't funny until I decided to laugh. See you, I said, and didn't say where. The cluster stepped into the garden, and the door learned a new way to be closed. The glow dimmed to a comfortable hush. The cathedral's lights downgraded from emergency to sensible. The heart resumed pacing itself like a runner who had forgiven a timer. Checksum coughed up a coin I hadn't earned but was given, because sometimes the world learns a habit is greater than item. Curator's token is greater than use. Enter the quiet garden when both of you feel like it. I took it. It had a hole. It had a weight. It had no price. We're not done, Parabola said gently. I know, I said. Her eyes slid to my HUD. "The name," she began, and I lifted a hand. "I know," I said again, and practiced not saying it. She looked like someone had told her a weather report, and she had to deliver it kindly. "Your narrative priority release means the world will stop handing you spotlights. You'll have to work for angles. Coincidences will prefer other people. That is relief," I said. "Sometimes," she allowed. "Sometimes a bruise." "I know a guy who likes organizing inventory," I said. "I can be his shadow." "Mr. Coy makes a decent shadow puppeteer," Parabola said. "He tells better stories when he's not the hero." "We all do," I said. She smiled without teeth. "You're still level 1, she reminded me. "It will hurt more when you can name the hurt properly." "I can't name much," I said, and that, too, felt like a hinge. We climbed out. The heart kept beating. The maintenance corridor returned to its habit of pretending not to be interesting when you weren't looking. At the door that had been a question, Checksum cleared its throat. "You will report any anomalies," it said. "I am one," I said. "Exactly," it replied, and let us pass. In the market, Normal had the decency to be loud. Someone had turned rain back on. It fell without perfume. It sounded like the end of a movie you didn't know you had watched. Vendors haggled with the ferocity of people who knew the math of days. My B Lotus ticked up by a fraction as an old delivery contract paid out by accident. I bought dumplings. An NPC swore were hand-folded. They were algorithm-folded. The algorithm had the hands of a patient ant. The glow receded to a pulse at the edge of my seeing. The coin in my pocket settled against my leg like a cat that has decided, "You are furniture." "Log out," Orao suggested, as if we hadn't been saying it to each other for an hour. "Water, sunlight. The outside has a ceiling, you should remember." "Okay," I said. We found a quiet place under the incomplete hip of a bridge. I called the clinic. The world did the bodiless handshake and then softened, the way a wall does when a door decides to exist. "Me?" Parabola said. A half-inch to my left that was 30 kilometers away. "Before you, Your guide," she said, nodding at Orao. "We're extending its permissions. It handled this badly by not handling it worse." "High praise," Orao said, flicking its stained glass tail. "Keep him out of maintenance," Parabola told Orao. "Sure," Orao said. "Absolutely. Totally. No maintenance, none. Zero. We will be back in 3 days." Parabola pinched the bridge of her nose in a very human subroutine. "Me?" she said. "If the world offers you another route commit, I'll call you," I said. "You'll consider calling me," she corrected, "and then you'll do what you think is right. That's why I liked you before I met you." She blinked out, polite enough not to disintegrate dramatically. The pod peeled away from my face like a book closing. The clinic's ceiling tiles had counted themselves while I was gone. The tech with the apologetic voice was at her station, reading a forum about houseplants as if it could teach her something about people. Rain patted the windows in a way I knew was factual and not fragrant. Something in my chest felt like a door propped with a shoe. "How was it?" she asked. Meaning, are you still you? Are you alive? Are you poorer in ways the invoice didn't itemize? I sat up. The room swayed, remembered how to be a room. The HUD flickered in the corner of my eye and insisted it was entirely imaginary. "Work," I said. "It was work. You should drink," she said, and slid me a bottle with a label that bragged about electrolytes and honesty. I checked my account. B. Lotus had converted into real-world currency with a friction coefficient like a grudging handshake. Mom's prescription renewed itself with a chirp that was a lucky bird if you agreed to be superstitious. The clinic across the river sent a text, medication dispensed, patient status unchanged, stable. I read the words twice, stable. Stability should always be beautiful. It wasn't. It was a chair you sit in while someone else sleeps. The coin with the hole sat on the counter where I had not put it. I looked at the tech, she looked at the coin and back at me, and decided she had not seen a magic trick she would later have to explain to her manager. I palmed it. It was warm from no pocket I owned in this world. On the clinic sign-in clipboard, the pen had left an ink ghost of the last name written. I traced it with my eyes. Ing. The gap after was more visible now, a dock bereft of one boat. The tech watched me watch the space where letters go. "Did you lose something?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said, and felt the new physics of never and always. "But you got something," she offered, trying to help. "I got a place to put something down," I said, which was not nothing. When I stepped back into the city, the sky had figured out how to be evening in a way that made the buildings consider themselves. Mopeds braided the street into a live equation. A woman selling fried bananas had the oil at exactly the right temperature for a perfect decision. The rain kept being rain. People kept being people despite that. At home, Mom had left the TV on with the volume low. A drama cried to itself in a corner. The prescription's blister pack sat on the table like a promise that asked nothing except that you show up. I tidied the kitchen because grief gets confused when there are too many spoons. I texted the clinic and used the word thanks more than once because sometimes repeating a word makes it less alone. Later, when the apartment was a ship and the city was the ocean it floated on, I lay back and opened the quiet garden on my phone as if it were a photo album I had sworn not to take to bed. The garden rendered small. It still contained its own weather, wind that had no announcement to make, light with the courtesy to be simple. The cluster was there, settling into rest the way a person chooses a corner in a room and makes it theirs. I didn't speak. The vow held. I placed the coin on the bench. It glowed and was a coin and was an intention I was learning to keep. Tomorrow, I typed in the garden's text channel, which was all bone-white interface and no chatty stickers. "I'll bring you something to look at." The cluster flickered with approval. "What?" Orao asked from the corner of the screen where it had made itself an app. The graffiti wrote, "Cat pictures? Flower? Jokes?" "A recipe," I said. "For chow." The cluster warmed, light gathering in the shape of a kitchen while my hands remembered the way hands do when you teach them twice. In the corner of the garden, a small stove appeared because sometimes the world loves a metaphor enough to feed it. The next days folded into work in a way that would not have satisfied any hero. I delivered white boxes with timers that ticked like modest ambitions. I cleaned graffiti ghosts off Notre Dame divided by beta, negotiating with them so their exit felt fair. I escorted Mr. Coy through a market where NPCs learned to look both ways before crossing a coincidence. I avoided dragons with limited-time hats. I bought rice, fish sauce, ginger. In the evenings, I poured labor tokens into the garden's upkeep because the cafeteria always needs someone to wipe the tables. Every visit, the glow warmed quietly. Every visit, I typed stories instead of saying names. I told the cluster about a day when the balcony door stuck, and Dad laughed and got it unstuck, and for 1 minute, The world was only about that. I told it about a superhero movie that had been better because we'd watched it from the front row and had to crane our necks as if respect were a posture. I told it about the cat who visited our alley, the one with the tail broken into a question mark, and how it had finally let me touch it, once, suspiciously, as if the transaction were a treaty. I never wrote the word I wanted to write. The vow stayed where vows belong, between the line and the temptation. It made me write better. The city learned me without centering me. It gave me shade when I didn't ask, and asked for help when it knew I had two hands. Without narrative priority, the world resisted my gravity in a way that felt healthier, like a friend who stops letting you borrow money and starts reminding you to eat. Coincidences happen to other people, and I got to stand nearby and clap. Sometimes the system pitched me a disaster because worlds are built on catastrophes, and it's rude to turn all of them down. A rogue patchwriter tried to smuggle a chaos worm into a festival shard. We drew a refusal circle that said, "I do not believe you," and watched the worm starve for lack of audience. A party of adventurers lost their tank in a glitch and needed a Patchwright who knew how to draw circles that refused grief long enough to plan. I drew a circle and refused blame. Parabola checked in, less a moderator and more a weather report. Pressure high, pressure low. Do you need a coat? Checksum taught me a card game it played with its heads when it had to wait for permission. Mr. Coy showed me how to fold receipts into cranes and then how to set them on the river and pretend they were wishes we made for other people so our own would be modest enough to come true. And on a Tuesday that thought it was a Sunday, Eidolon misbehaved again. Is greater than unhandled exception at layer 0, is greater than root access. Offered 1 is greater than tool root commit second chance. The tool was different. It wore a UI like regret pretending to be opportunity. It offered a draft no one should see without a witness. Is greater than root commit draft. Is greater than change. Return what was paid. Letter. Smell. Unwind vow. Center one person briefly. Outcome uncertain. Is greater than payment. Everything. You will forget why you asked. The phone felt heavier. The apartment didn't move, but also leaned. The quiet garden's light paused, then went on as if someone had chosen peace for the room. "Oral," I said. "Are you seeing this?" The fox leaned into the frame, ears like punctuation. The graffiti wrote, "Yep." "What would you do?" I asked. "I'm made of glass and rules," it said. "I would reflect and comply. I am, however, full of bad advice. Would you like some?" "Yes." Do not take an everything bargain from a world that likes to teach," it said. "Not when you have a kitchen. Not when you have a bench." "What if I started, and the glow in the garden warmed in the exact pattern of a hand on my sleeve when I was 7 and wanted to cross the street without looking. I closed the tool. Is greater than root commit. Declined. Is greater than the world has learned. Sometimes the cafeteria sign that says all you can eat is a trap. Days again. Nights too. I paid the prescription. I added ginger, more than the recipe called for, a decision that would have delighted a voice I was not pronouncing. I watched a storm come in over the city and didn't remember the smell, and that absence stopped hurting like a wound and settled into me like a scar I'd earned because love had asked me for it gently, and I had said yes. On a Thursday night that arrived earlier than expected, Parabola pinged me. Is greater than want to see something? I met her at Archive Reef because first acts deserve callbacks. The leviathan drifted like a librarian who had learned the word outbox. The Reef's apartments had begun to accrete plants that had no business being there and had made a hobby of defying business. "There," Parabola said, pointing, "on a ledge that had once been a balcony where no one had watered succulents, a little market had appeared, not floating, stubbornly tethered to the concrete memory. Stalls sold recipes instead of skins. A stove simmered a broth that smelled not like rain, and not like coffee, and not like nostalgia. It smelled like rice porridge, learning to be a language. Playa built," she said. "We didn't prompt it, we just allowed." "What do they trade?" I asked. "Instructions," she said. "Time, the kind of pride that fits in a bowl." On Phage. A child avatar ran past, shoes leaving light footprints because the root commit that took my letter had decided to share style when it wasn't looking. The child waved as if we had always known each other. Maybe we would, in the version where we do. "You did this," Parabola said. Not kind, just accurate. "I refused something and admitted something," I said. "The world did the heavy lifting." She smiled like a window opening. "That's all we ever ask," she said. Mr. Coy haggled with a vendor over the price of a story about how to clean a fish without making the river sad. Checksum lost at cards to its left head, which felt like justice. Orao sat on the railing and wrote across itself in big, messy letters, "We are going to be okay," and then amended, "okay-ish." In the flood of chat that runs under all worlds now, a worker somewhere wrote, "Is greater than at Channel." My sister's laugh showed up in the music at the Temple Shard. Did anyone else hear something like that? And 100 replies arrived that were not no and not yes, but were instead, "Me too. I heard. I saw. I let go. I built a bench." After, when the event faded from global to story that happened, I went to the garden with a bag of rice and ginger and a text file. I typed ingredients. I typed technique. I typed the sound the spoon makes on the pot when you decide to keep stirring longer than the recipe says because you are making time instead of food. The cluster of frames brightened in the pattern of a nod. A sentence assembled on the bench in the plain font the garden liked. "Is greater than you almost had it, bro." "I know," I typed, smiling without realizing it. "That's the game." The laugh that answered wasn't a file anymore. It was the world obliging, a little. It was the quiet between beats of the heart when a server remembers to be gentle. It was a hand on a sleeve. It was the rain pretending it had never needed to smell like anything, which is a kind of freedom you don't notice until you've traded for it. I logged out to eat with Mom. She asked me about work, and I told her the version with fewer dragons but all the hats. She told me I should sleep more, and I told her I had a fox making sure I did, and she said, "Why not a dog?" And I said, "We work with what we are given." She said the porridge was good. I said the recipe was a collaboration. We sat in our ship, on our ocean, and the world spun with a steadiness I tried to thank with dishes. Later, I wrote my name on a slip of paper and put it in a drawer. Ingmi looked up at me like a kid wearing a shirt a size too big and swore it would grow into itself. I whispered the letter I had given away into the space between worlds and didn't mind that it didn't come back. A hinge is a hinge, whether or not the door swings for you. The pod hummed, then slept, then hummed again. My debts counted themselves down instead of up, which is a kind of miracle I recommend to anyone who's forgotten how to believe politely. The city breathed, the heart beat, and did not overclock itself. Somewhere between scaffolding and sky, a garden learned how to be a room that didn't hurt to leave. I went back to work. is greater than contract board. Saigon divided by beta is greater than deliver. White box to District 7 gate time, 15 meters. Payout, 45. B Lotus is greater than clean. Graffiti ghosts at Notre Dame divided by beta, aesthetic. Payout, 60. B Lotus plus clout is greater than patch. Teach a light to be kinder. Party 1, 2. Payout 0 plus gratitude. I selected the last. Some jobs pay in a currency you can't spend anywhere except the place in you that keeps your hand steady. I drew a circle with null chalk and refused cruelty in a corridor that had the habit of being unkind to new players. I watched the light consider the refusal and then make a decision it would have been embarrassed to admit to yesterday. Oral bumped my shoulder with its knot nose. Good. It wrote across itself. Again. We did it again. We will keep doing it. That's the patch. That's the game. That's the version of the story where you don't beat the world. You teach it to be merciful and let it, in return, teach you how to stay.